We can't find the ocean!
The voice on the radio was tense, almost confused. It came from the leader of a squadron of U.S. Navy planes flying over the Atlantic in 1945. The weather was clear. The men were trained. Everything looked routine. But as the minutes passed, their transmissions grew stranger. Compasses failed. Landmarks made no sense. And the leader's voice wavered with uncertainty. Radio operators tried to guide them home, but the planes were nowhere to be found. A search was launched, but the results were not what anyone expected. An entire squadron vanished, leaving behind only fragments of their last words, and a mystery with no clear answer. This is the story of Flight 19, a routine training mission that became one of the strangest disappearances in aviation history. On the afternoon of December 5th, 1945, 5 U.S. Navy TBM Avenger bombers prepared for a training flight from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. The flight was led by Lieutenant Charles C. Taylor, a combat veteran with extensive experience. The rest of the crew were trainee pilots and navigators. In total, 14 men were on board. Their task was a standard navigation exercise. The route would take them east over the Atlantic Ocean, then north toward the Bahamas, before turning back toward Florida. The entire trip was expected to take about 3 hours. Conditions were ideal for flying. The weather was clear, the sea was calm, and the planes had enough fuel for over 5 hours in the air. At 2:10 p.m., the planes took off in formation and headed east. They maintained radio contact with each other and with the base as they climbed to cruising altitude. The early part of the mission went according to plan. There were no signs of technical problems or communication issues. But as they moved farther from the Florida coast, the flight began to encounter unexpected difficulties. Problems that would soon place the squadron in serious danger. At first, the mission was on schedule. The planes were last positively identified over the Bahamas just after 3 p.m. by a Navy training flight returning to base. Less than 90 minutes after takeoff, radio stations in Florida began receiving unusual messages from the lead plane. Lieutenant Taylor reported that both of his compasses had stopped working. He told the base that he was unsure of their position. The landmarks below did not match what he expected to see for that point in the route. The other pilots believed they were somewhere east of Florida and advised turning west toward the coast. Taylor, however, disagreed. He was convinced they were over the Florida Keys, far to the south, and that turning west would take them into the Gulf of Mexico instead of home. This disagreement created confusion within the squadron. Navy ground stations picked up multiple transmissions from different pilots. Some messages came through clearly, while others were broken by static or cut off entirely. One log records Taylor saying, "We are not sure of our position. We can't be sure where the land is." In another, he is heard telling the group to stay together no matter what happens. Around 4 p.m., the weather began to change. Observers at coastal bases reported clouds building rapidly to the east. Visibility dropped. A light chop developed on the ocean surface, making it harder to spot landmarks from the air. Taylor's voice grew more uncertain. At one point, he was heard saying, We can't find the ocean. Everything looks strange." As the sun began to set, the situation became critical. The planes were running low on fuel, and the static on the radio made clear communication almost impossible. One of the last complete transmissions came late in the afternoon. When the first plane drops below 10 gallons, we all go down together. Minutes later, all contact with Flight 19 was lost. By nightfall, the Navy had declared an emergency. Search and rescue operations began within hours of losing contact. More than 300 boats and aircraft were mobilized over the next several days. The search zone covered thousands of square miles of ocean and extended as far north as the Carolinas and as far south as the Florida Keys. Coastal bases, aircraft carriers, and merchant ships all took part. Despite the scale of the effort, not a single piece of wreckage from Flight 19 was found. There were no life rafts, no oil slicks, no debris. Nothing that could confirm where or how the squadron had gone down. The search itself claimed more lives. One of the aircraft sent to look for them, a PBM Mariner patrol plane with 13 men on board, also disappeared. A passing ship reported seeing a fireball in the sky around the time the Mariner was last heard from, suggesting an explosion. But again, no wreckage was recovered. In total, 27 men were lost. The official Navy investigation struggled to produce a clear explanation. Early drafts of the report listed the cause as unknown. Later, it was changed to pilot error, suggesting that Taylor became disoriented and led the flight far out to sea until fuel ran out. But even this conclusion left many questions unanswered. Over time, Flight 19 became linked to a larger pattern of disappearances in the region between Florida, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico. Sailors and pilots had long told stories about strange weather, sudden compass failures, and ships or planes vanishing without a trace in these waters. By the late 20th century, this area had become widely known as the Bermuda Triangle. Skeptics point out that the region is one of the busiest shipping and flight corridors in the world, and accidents are bound to happen. Others argue that Flight 19's disappearance, along with the loss of the rescue plane, fits the pattern of strange and unexplained events reported there. To this day, no confirmed wreckage from Flight 19 has ever been found. The exact location of the squadron's final moments remains unknown, and the mystery continues to fuel speculation about what happened on that calm December afternoon.